That's why.
Oh, I'm sorry. Good morning. It is Sunday, and not just any Sunday, because yesterday we actually fell back 1 hour in that bizarre scientific experiment that started with Benjamin Franklin called daylight saving time, and we had an extra hour, and I hope you had a chance to spend it with somebody you love. When God gives you one extra hour, you need to use it, and I used it in a rotation. And I was reminded by the fact that even though I may be sitting right now in this room by myself, I am not alone because someone once told me we are all made of star stuff. And there is billions and billions of particles that stretch out between our corporal body and the edge of the cosmos. And we're going to get into that into our rotation. I mean, seriously, if you have an extra hour, get a rotation in. Absolutely. Because it can be so mind expanding. And speaking of mind expanding, we have so much to talk about here today because we have actually special guests. I did kind of like flaunt my book here, which I have had since 1980. I got one of the first copies that came out because I was a big fan of the Nova series in the first place. And my wife and I watched the entire series from beginning, which was good because she said she was like a fan of the author Carl Sagan since she was like 9 years old, which is actually even before Cosmos came out. But that's good. It works out quite well for me. My name is Gary Stein. I am the Master of Public Health and the Political and Policy Director for Suncoast Normal. Good morning.
Good morning, Gary.
Where is there we go. And to give us everybody else here on the far right, coming to us from Ybor City, where he is the proprietor of Chillum's CBD and Mushroom Dispensary, and our Deputy Director and Master of Business Administration, Carlos Jose Angel Armida. And in the center square, on the top, we coming to us from, I think now, back in Annapolis, Maryland, where he is above the Beltway, hitting him below the Beltway. Our Executive Director and Master of Public Administration, Chris Cano, and we are the Masters of Cannabis.
Chris.
And I'll be remiss without mentioning that we have our Communications Director and resident IT geek, Katrina Pink, joining us as well today.
Yeah.
With the hair that matches the name today, which is, I guess, just absolutely lovely.
Yeah, good look at that hair, you know.
Thank you.
And Chris, since you are on the Executive Council of Normal, I'm going to give you the intro on here on our special guest today.
Oh, well, thank you, Gary. It is truly a life's honor to serve on the National Board of Normal and to have the opportunity to bring a true living legend and a member of the Normal Emeritus Board who served for many years on the Normal Board of Directors, Druyan. And welcome to the show.
Thank
Thanks, guys.
you.
I'm really excited.
So for folks who don't know Ann, you may know her work. And you have worked on interstellar communications for NASA and helping develop, the golden record and the content on it for the Voyager program. You've had the opportunity to develop the show that has brought science to so many homes throughout the world, Cosmos. So,
Cosmos.
I think of how lucky I've been. I was the director of the Voyager Interstellar Message, as you said, the golden record. You know, what a privilege and an honor that was. And then to be able to write, produce, direct 3 seasons of Cosmos over 45 years, as well as the motion picture Contact. And
I loved Contact.
half a dozen books. Please. Great.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Wife is blind, and of course, he had that one blind character in Contact who was able to listen so succinctly to the sounds of the universe and be able to make sense out of them. I thought was just an absolutely fascinating character.
Well, I have to confess that it was based on a true, at that time, living astronomer who was blind, and he was our inspiration. And so we weren't smart enough to make him up. But once we realized, once we got to know him, we thought, what a perfect way to convey to the audience that you can be, not have one of the ordinary senses, and yet still participate fully in the romance of life in the cosmos. And so we thought he was, we were really excited to tell his story.
Well, and I gotta say, as much as we all love Cosmos, for me, Contact was definitely a eye-opening experience because I'd always been drawn to the sciences, but it was the intersection of government and politics and religion in Contact that really made me really realize that you have to be in the halls of power if you want to really make sure that the science is conveyed in public policy. One of the things that I saw by the character that Jeff Busey played in that one, as a religious extremist who blows up the whole project, literally,
Yeah.
and it was just such a eye-opening thing. And then to see the intersection of James Wood and Angela Bassett's characters in that movie, and the whole time here's poor Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey just wanting to save the world and make contact with aliens, and then you have the politicians and the religious extremists screwing everything up, which is a great backdrop for the world we live in today. So, you are literally a living prophet in a lot of ways.
But let me tell you guys, in my wildest, darkest, most extreme fantasies, I never could have dreamed of the moment we're living in right now. And I've often thought, I don't expect Carl to come back. I don't expect ever to see Carl again. But oh my God, if I ever did, and how would I explain to him how we got so lost? It would be heartbreaking, really.
Yes,
because he really loved this country and he really loved what it stood for.
Well, and I wanted to take a second to really start out with you and Carl, right? Like you were doing all this amazing work. Like folks love a good love story. Cue us into how you and Carl got going, because you're more than Carl Sagan's wife, right? You're also the keeper of the legacy, but you yourself stand alone as an amazing scientist and author. And I just don't want to have folks also think that it's Carl Sagan's wife. No, it's like so many ways and so many great men that live, there is always an amazing woman that has uplifted them, that taught them to be better, and that's something that we want to hear too as well. So
well, I think we made each other so much better, and it's a really great story. I'll try to be brief. So in the early mid 1970s, I attended a very small dinner party that Nora Ephron, who was a writer at that time, but then also became a very esteemed film director. She gave this little dinner party in New York City, and that's how Carl and I met. We were with other partners, and the four of us, one of my boyfriend at the time had interviewed Carl for one of the magazines like Playboy, or, that sort of did that big high profile interview. And he wanted to do another one with Carl. And the four of us, including Carl's wife, Linda Salzman Sagan, got together and became friends. And we were friends, worked on a project for the Children's Television Workshop that never got produced. But during that time, Carl and I had the chance to think together. And it was just a kind of magical experience for me. It was sublime creating with him. So when the Voyager interstellar message became a possibility, the first epic reconnaissance of the outer solar system in the mid 1970s, this opportunity that only happens once every 170 years because of the way that the worlds of the solar system are situated in relationship to our planet and to the sun. So here was a chance for the first time to look at these worlds up close and to put a golden phonograph record on each of the two Voyagers, affix it to its side, so that when phase 2 of the mission, upon its completion of this epic reconnaissance of the solar system, when they would be flung out of our solar system and become interstellar craft with a future of 1 to 5 billion years, they would be circumnavigating Milky Way galaxy perhaps a dozen times over a 5 billion year period. And so Carl had the opportunity to design this message and to select the contents. And he turned to me and Tim Ferriss, who had been my boyfriend, and a few other people to help him design this message to forever. And remember, this is at the height of the nuclear arms race during the Cold War. The whole planet is a kind of a hostage drama attached to 60,000 nuclear weapons of mass destruction and held hostage by the US and the Soviet Union, and to a lesser degree, China, France, and Britain. And so we were going to create this message, which was a Noah's Ark of human culture, music, greetings in some 59 human languages, as well as the greetings of the humpback whales, and pictures, 118 pictures of what it was like to be alive on the planet in the mid-70s, as well as a sound essay, which I created, which was a kind of an audio history of the planet, as well as a meditation for 1 hour, compressed into a minute of sound, of me completely sensorily deprived, blindfold, ear things so I couldn't hear anything.
Deprivation tank?
Meditating. Huh?
Did you use a deprivation tank?
No deprivation tank. But it was state of the art for 1977. So you can imagine a computer the size of a good sized room, which didn't have the computing power that you have right this moment in your phone. And so I was hooked up to all these things, my brain waves, my EEG, my heart sounds, and my EKG. And I meditated for an hour, and this was only days after Carl and I realized that we were in love and that we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. And so you can imagine the exaltation, the joy, that feeling. I mean, I was bursting with joy, and my brainwaves and heart sounds at that peak moment, although it only got higher afterwards, was preserved for 5 billion years with a fate we can only imagine. And these two magnificent, flawless spacecraft still talking to us almost 50 years later, still functioning perfectly. And the reason I mention this in such detail is, think of this, an interstellar mission 20 years after Sputnik, the first thing that we ever put into space, just a metal ball with an antenna in near Earth orbit. 20 years later, we humans are creating interstellar missions with futures that are longer than the one of our own planet. Our own planet isn't going to be here 5 billion years from now. And I just mentioned that because for those of you who feel a little sad and hopeless about the world situation and our country's situation right now, think how steep our human learning curve is within 20 years to go from just a tiny metal ball to something as as epic, as cosmic as the Voyager missions. So that was the unfolding of my life with Carl, my beautiful life with him. We had 2 children who I'm very proud of, a magnificent 20 years together until his untimely death in 1996.
I've had a chance to take a glimpse at Antonio's work on
Oh, yeah, our grandson, right.
on the gold platter and what he did with the soundtrack for it. It just goes. I love the fact that you have an intergenerational push towards this amazing vision of hope.
Tonio is, I love Tonio Sagan, and let's not forget Nick Sagan, who was the youngest staff writer on Star Trek in history. And
What was his name? I'm sorry.
Nick Sagan. And on those lists of greatest Star Trek episodes of all time, he always has 2 of them. He's just a magnificent person, a professor, my neighbor, beloved father, husband, great guy. And then Sasha Sagan, our daughter, who wrote a book that I can recommend with the greatest of passion called For Small Creatures Such as We, which is not only a fantastic exploration of the scientific, biological, astronomical underpinnings of human rituals around the world, but also a magnificent memoir about what it was like to grow up with us as her parents. I completely am so proud of her. And then Sam Sagan, who is a writer and who was a producer on Cosmos and has written a bunch of things which you're just about to hear about. So I couldn't be prouder of our kids, and I couldn't, I just can't tell you what a joy it is to hang out with them. Yeah.
That's a
I
beautiful
like the fact
story.
that the gold
We need
platter.
we need a short story in that magazine though, Suncoast Normal.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And you were talking about Star Trek and Nick getting it right on that. One of the most interesting things about the original Star Trek motion picture was that the premise that an advanced civilization discovers one of the Voyager probes, and they end up, adding to it and created it, and it turns into like this almost machine-like god. And then Captain Kirk and then realized, like, wait a minute, this is an old Voyager probe, and Beecher. And I think about the Voyager 1 and the Golden Record, and just like you said, your own heartbeat, our human DNA. So if you happen to wake up 5 billion years in the future one day because an advanced civilization decided to bring you back from the data on the record, maybe you could tell them about the rotation.
I will, if given enough time, I'm sure I'll get around to it, and be happy to do that.
People don't realize.
I'll commit now. In the event that happens, I'm making you a promise.
Appreciate that.
Right.
Appreciate
really
that.
quick here. To me, it's just an opinion. You know how people say, in the world, computers are going to take over the world. With that backstory you just gave me, I just don't believe it. Because if your brains and brain cells had to do that much work to get the computers to work for us now, I commend you and I thank you. Okay, so
I mean, I know we often have to deal with what we have. Like, for instance, Skylab had a computer that was basically based on the Commodore 64. For those who are familiar,
that's right.
It's a very, very rudimentary computer. And when I went to Michigan State University, we had a computer which took up the entire 3rd floor of the computer science building, and we all had to go with our cards and print up our Fortran computer keys and wait for a printed printout. And now what we have is just in our hand. And
that shows you what happens. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that shows you what happens when we humans put our minds to something.
Yes.
When we apply our intelligence, our cleverness to a problem. And what's, I think, tragic is that we have many problems right now, but we've turned away from that kind of constructive engagement because the only thing that really seems to matter to the decision makers is money and power.
And who you know,
nothing,
and who you know. It's not what you know, it's who
and
you know.
nothing about the future
Yeah.
of our species, our planet, our children. It's all
About
phony
the
sentimentality. They don't care about children at all.
It's only
And
for themselves.
where do you just as a cultural commentary, where was it that we went wrong as a culture? Because I look back as a kid in the 80s, early 90s, I was so wide-eyed for our future. I saw the cars that ran on hydrogen water, and then I saw the oh man, we're gonna be like the Jetsons, and then we have flying cars and we have these things, but they're only for the rich, and then many of times they're only concepts that end up getting buried by industry. And it's like you've lived through so much of our history and contributed to it. And I just wanted to see culturally, like, the consumer culture that we live in today, where everyone is looking down at a phone and no one's looking up and around. And I just wanted to get your cultural commentary on it. What are your thoughts of where did we diverge wrong?
I don't pretend to know the answer to that question. I can just say, as a person who's 76 and who has seen some things, I have to say that we went wrong in a couple of ways. One is we stopped teaching civics to kids. I think kids are just as good now as they ever were. I'm not that kind of old person who's like, kids today. No, not at all. But the fact is that as humans, we have a whole spectrum of qualities, strengths, weaknesses. It's easy to push our buttons with violence, with hatred, with prejudice. They're so easy to do. The question is, what qualities that we have do our leaders value, emphasize, model? What do they model? And I think there was a real tragedy, actually. And there are many different ways in which we messed up, but there was a gradually moving away from modeling certain kinds of education, and curiosity. And I thought Carl was a magnificent exemplar of what a person who can function on all different levels, but who has a passionate curiosity, not to make himself feel better than everyone else, not to lecture other people, and I hope I'm not doing that now, but to communicate, feeling, oh my God, I've been so lucky. I had access to education. I was able to follow my bliss, to ask these questions, to interrogate nature, and then to discover things about nature that are so much greater than I ever dreamed. I want you to have these things too. We went from that to a kind of idiocracy is the only way I could describe it.
Idiocracy and autocracy, because so much of what our culture is involved in is basically around macroeconomics and microeconomics.
But also, celebrating ignorance, as Carl said, I have to say, I listened to our national leader and I cannot believe the idiocy that I'm hearing. And yet, if back in the day, even 20, 30 years ago, if a political figure made one statement as obviously untrue and as irrational and as wandering and weird, that would be a career ender. And yet what we're getting is a steady diet of idiocy.
Indeed.
So is it like a slap in the face to you? It's like a slap in the face, all the hard work that you put in. That's
Yes. It's a slap in the, yes, absolutely right.
You're not only talking to a normal chapter that is under our national leader, or Donald Trump, I'll go ahead and say his name, but we're also in Florida, and we have a local leader who he says what you can and can't say in a classroom. He bans books. You know, I was wondering maybe you could make a comment on how education is going in Florida.
Well, I tried. Yeah, I have to say, first of all, you have my sympathies. I don't know if I could do that. Second of all, the burning of books. Like, if we don't know that the burning of books is the cheapest, easiest, most unmistakable sign of things going horribly wrong,
Yeah.
then what do we know? All you have to know is that book burners and the library purgers are the enemy of human existence. We have to find a way to deal with our real problems, not the fake problems and the fake enemies that these people conjure up. No, we have to really, it's like we can't afford a 10-year break from reality. Because right now our lever arm on the future is so strong with technology. I'm not afraid of AI. And, it might turn out to be something that's horribly misused, or it could be something that's excellent for finding the solutions to so many human diseases. I think both things are possible. But if we don't have a political framework in which to try to mitigate the worst effects and to support the best potential effects, I can tell you how it's going to turn out. It's very straightforward.
No, you're absolutely right. When it comes to AI, it's like so many other human tools, right?
Exactly.
If you go back to the first human tools, you can take a club to smash rocks and get food, or you can take it to hit someone over the head with.
Exactly.
And the current struggles we have resound a lot with the Frank Herbert books that I used to read as a kid, and it's like men with computers are going to enslave other men who aren't prepared. And our political structure really is something that we should be concerned about. It goes back to what Carl was saying in the demon haunted world,
Exactly.
and the fact that the demons are real. And they're not these nebulous, constructs of spirituality, but they're people making decisions that are selfish, that are short-sighted, and these are we're going to have serious consequences as it. And our current political structure, if you think about it, is based off of ancient Rome and the Roman Senate, and we're not paying any attention to the lessons of those politics and the fact that when you allow rich people to govern without the concern of the masses, and you allow selfish people to govern, it never works out well. And it's sad because there were so many great scientists and thinkers and people, and that's why I go back to Contact. Some of the most brilliant minds in that movie are marginalized by those with power, and that was the biggest takeaways that I've been able to learn. And that's one of the things, again, that spurred me into wanting to be in public office and public service, because it is the decision makers in those halls of power who oftentimes have no scientific background and don't think of the things that we have that are important. I'm sitting here thinking, wait a minute, you're telling me we have all these universities all over the planet, and we're only monitoring a small percentage of the sky. I mean, an asteroid literally just dropped into the atmosphere in the Philippines last week, and no one batted an eye because they didn't even know. It's like, the things that keep me up at night definitely are not keeping these guys up at night.
Right.
Absolutely. In fact, near Earth objects, NEOs, was one of the things that Carl devoted an enormous amount of energy and time trying to get the government to start monitoring NEOs for potential danger. And that was a struggle. That took like 10 years and now there's all this backsliding. NASA is completely being destroyed, really, but it's just one part of the government that's being hollowed out. I was very politically active, not just with Normal, but in the 60s and 70s on a variety of issues. And even when I was most angry with my government, I was proud of NASA. I really felt pride in it because it was, first of all of the results that come from the outer solar system, from other planets and moons, they're shared with the world instantaneously. That was the ethos at NASA that made me so proud, that it recognized that we're one species, that on a tiny little dot, some kind of momentary dominance of a fraction of a dot, like you're a fruit fly fighting over a grape, is beneath human dignity, that we have to work together. All of that has been swept off the table. And here we find ourselves, in this moment where we really have to stand up for what the country was really meant to be about, not this nightmare that we're
I don't know.
living
I
in.
feel like if the aliens never would have touched base or got lost here and gave us the insight of this kind of technology, we'll still be where we should be. I think we're just too advanced, and we're moving way too fast and not the right way. I totally agree. Because I'm into the IT world and watching NASA, as long as I've been watching it, and the downpour and, like you say, what it used to be when it was like black and white versus the color is an insight that I can't. I'm like Kano when it comes to this. Like, I sleep on things and wonder about things that they're not even thinking about or even, you know, grasping it. So it's like I totally get it. We have the resources, we have everything that we need to push forward, but we're just not doing it. It's just that we're not
No,
doing it the right way.
it's
All
like
that
we're
hard work we put in
sleepwalking.
is just not working.
Yeah, and
We're
the promise that
sleepwalking.
NASA created, it was we stopped pointing missiles at each other and started pointing them at the sky.
Right,
I
right,
mean,
right.
that's always been an amazing thing about humanity, is like we could take the worst of us and turn it into the best with the right minds and the right guidance. And you've been one of those minds, and I just want to continue to extol the work and the virtues that you embody. And I just wanted to pivot for a moment, because we talked a lot of heady science stuff for folks, but you also served on the National Board of Directors of Normal, and we all want to know, like, the Nancy Reagan propaganda that we all grew up with in the 80s, and the fact that the Ninja Turtles told me that people were going to offer me free weed much more than has ever happened in my life.
Yeah,
I still
that's
struggle
why I
with
love
that.
the Ninja Turtles.
but you are a living embodiment proof that you can be one of the greatest thinkers and a cannabis user, and that the propaganda falls short. So share us a little bit about your journey with cannabis, and how it affected you as a thinker, as a human, and how it spurs your political activism.
Well, cannabis has made my life better in every conceivable way. I began as a young teenager in the 60s, and I remember the very first moment that I got high, and it enabled me to leave my sentry post, my emotional, intellectual sentry post, and
Absolutely.
opened me up to other people's feelings, to the reality of, I remember lying in the backyard in Queens where I grew up, little postage stamp backyard, and remember lying in the grass as a teenager, gentle rain falling, smoking my very first joint, and suddenly becoming aware of an ant on another blade of grass
Very cognizant.
nearby, and suddenly seeing the ant's POV, the ant's perspective on me. And that was a paradigm shift for me. That changed my whole life. And I gotta say that that it has enhanced every aspect of my existence. I've never felt like I had to smoke a joint. I never felt, the problems of any form of it that, people talk about addiction. Never in 70 years, no, 60 years, never, never, never. And not only that, it brought me so much closer to all of my family members. It enhanced my experience of being with them countless times. And
Oh my
professionally, in terms of the fact that, of course, Carl made no secret, never lied, even in the Nancy Reagan period of, maximum penalty, asked on a radio show on the Larry King show late at night, we're both doing the show, asked a phone-in caller, says, Dr. Sagan, have you ever smoked marijuana? Carl says, of course. No nonsense, no, just honest. And what's
So
so
nothing
interesting,
behind it, just the honest truth. That's it.
honest truth, no. And when I think of what it meant in terms of our creative work, in terms of, our output, I defy anyone to accomplish more in their lifetime than Carl Sagan did in his 62 years. He had 10 different careers going, and at the heart of it, a very important, productive scientific career in which his speculations have proven to be incredibly robust and well-founded. And he was daring, and yet he was never reckless. He never said things to get attention. He said them to communicate. So in the worst days of Nancy Reagan, I was invited to join the Normal Board, and this was during the time of Keith Stroop and Alan St. Pierre, two guys who I have just the greatest respect for. And they were tireless, dogged in their determination to change policy and to protect people who had been arrested, incarcerated, just really two amazing people. And Keith and Alan and I had this fantasy, which we were never able to raise the money for, which was to do, at that time, they used to say, oh, marijuana is so bad for you, it creates the amotivational syndrome, where people who smoke marijuana never do anything. And so we created the prototypes of these large heroic portraits of a number of the greatest contributors to American society. And among them was Carl. And it
Nice.
was victim of amotivational syndrome,
Nice.
and then it just listed all of the things that Carl did.
Well,
Best-selling novels, best-selling nonfiction books,
that took
speeches,
that away.
a discoverer of the actual temperature of Venus, first person to understand that the runaway greenhouse effect had turned Venus from our point of view, a very clement planet to a kind of hell with a very, very high temperature that melts spacecraft within an hour or so of landing, that kind of thing. And
Nice.
Carl had just he won the Pulitzer Prize. He was a participant in every single NASA mission from the dawn of the space age until his death in December of 1996. And by many people in the scientific world say that it was his interests that continue to prevail over the scientific community in terms of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence and our understanding of the origin of life here. And so, Carl was one of the people in this campaign. And unfortunately, we never got to actually mount that campaign. But all I can say is, I am the lucky recipient of so much love for Carl, for Cosmos, for Contact, for the stuff that I've worked on in the last, almost 30 years on my own. So much love. And among them are always images of people who have tattoos of something that Carl wrote or I wrote or we wrote together on their bodies. Now, the prevailing thing about cannabis is, oh, you have these ideas, but then the next morning, if you write them down, you realize how stupid they are. Well, I'm here to tell you that there are tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of people on this planet who have tattooed those sentences, those ideas, those
That's
images
awesome.
on their bodies.
Not the only
So
one.
clearly they thought they were
That
not
is good.
completely worthless.
I have a question. Really quick. I can't wait to ask. Okay, so
Please,
really quick.
please.
And respect to the late Mr. Carl. He was a great asset to the world. Thank you for sharing his work and what he put in. Awesome. And really quick, what did he leave with you about the future before his last days with us? Do you have anything to give us from him?
Yes. I mean, what I think of when I think of Carl is it matters what's true. I didn't know that before. People always talk about how much I influenced Carl, but the way in which Carl influenced me is equally as important, maybe more important. When I met him, I first began to communicate with him, I had a very vaporous idea of reality. And it was, shall we say, a little bit flexible in terms of, it didn't matter to me so much if something was real or true. It mattered if it was a good story or if it felt good to think it or believe it. And Carl made me understand by his example why it matters what's true. And there are so many different reasons, but I would say that we are in a moment where it doesn't matter what's true. It matters what feels good. It matters, it matters how it helps the people who are in power. That's
Yep.
all it
Yep.
matters.
Control.
And I would say that the best way to honor the remarkable, beautiful life of Carl Sagan is to go back and try to wean ourselves of these very pernicious, damaging fantasy beliefs that we are falling more and more heir to in a way that is, I think, very dangerous.
Yeah.
Indeed.
We
You
think
know,
we're ahead, but we're so far behind. That's how I feel.
yeah.
We're going backwards. You
Yeah.
can't lie your way to Mars. You can't.
No.
Everybody involved in any one of those missions, and there are usually 10,000 or 15,000 people involved in each mission. If one of them fudges, okay, there are redundancies built in every mission to protect against that. But if lying becomes the kind of dominant problem, we go nowhere.
Nowhere.
Yeah. It reminds me of the core values that they taught us at the U.S. Air Force Academy, and it's integrity first.
Yeah.
That's the first value, then service before self, and then excellence in everything that you do.
More ethics.
But integrity first is what matters. And we live in a time where truth has become the very first casualty in this war for control, as Pink pointed out. We're literally battling for the control of humanity's destiny right now, with powers that be that have more organizational money and more organizational power than the vast majority of us among the common folk, if you will. And it is definitely high time that we wake up and pay attention. And it makes so much sense as to why they continue to propagandize cannabis and marginalize people who utilize it. And I just want to say I'm willing to pick up the mantle and run with it. I think a normal project that you laid out with Keith and Alan, we could turn into trading cards and really help the next generation see the amazing value in what folks have accomplished, like yourself. And so if you be so kind, I'm happy to help immortalize you into a trading card, and Carl and all the great thinkers that are also have been cannabis users. So, I think about the Mount Rushmore of great scientists and people who have influenced me, and it's people like Bob Ross and Fred Rogers, Carl Sagan. And Druyan is on that list too. and people need to know that there are so many amazing people in this world who just want us to be better, and so often we fall short of that, but we can be better if we choose to be. And if you weren't better yesterday, be better today. And I think that those are some of the lessons that you all have helped instill in my generation, and I plan on instilling those into my son. So.
Thank you so much. Can I just say one thing? First of all, I am so gratified and humbled to be in that group with those three guys. And let me mention that those three guys, we know them because of public television. And it's something that is under siege right now, and that the current administration is doing everything to destroy. Isn't that interesting that those three guys who were such wonderful models of men and adulthood and how you be a person and how you contribute and how you respect other people, those guys, we wouldn't even know them if it wasn't for public television.
And yeah, I hate to think that we can't rely on our government to shore up intelligence. I mean, one of the things, the difference between National Geographic, whom you work with, and PBS is that National Geographic does not use public funds, correct?
Actually, it depends upon the National Geographic Foundation. So that is money given by the public. I don't think there's anything wrong with public funds as long as the government keeps its hands off what is said and what is presented. Public funds, I love public funds. You wouldn't have had a space program without public funds.
That is correct. That's what the people say.
Yes, and that was only because of the government. And that's true about SNAP. It's true about health care for too many people.
Yep.
It's true what about Social Security, man? Social Security is the ultimate public fund, and more than half of the people in this country over the age of 65 would be living below the poverty level if it wasn't for Social Security. So don't talk to me about public funds. That is the appropriate business of government.
I agree, but the problem is that the
pay it
government
every
can
time we
possibly.
get paid.
What we have right now is a situation where PBS relied very heavily on public funding, and having that taken away, it puts them at odds with their business model, and they need to get more private funds in to keep it maintained. And that, I think, is a great shame that they could actually cut off that spigot.
Well, look what's happening to those private networks and platforms. Do you think that's better? Where they only give us the kind of garbage that perpetuates our selfishness and our short-term thinking? You think that's better? Yeah. It's not a problem between public and private. It's a problem between what you mentioned earlier, which was service over self.
Yeah.
Service over self. Why was that the motto of the U.S. Air Force Academy? Because that's what's required to protect our future is service over self. And whether it's public or private, that's the question. So I don't have any problem with public. I think that it's obviously the business of government to create in every industrialized nation on earth to vouchsafe for certain rights for every person. That's human dignity. If I may just preach for one more minute, please. And that is our species. So for the vast majority of the history of the human species, starting out in Africa, we were hunter-gatherers until only about 15,000 years ago. So for, let's say, 700,000 years, we were hunter-gatherers. And we didn't have settled agriculture until about 15,000 years ago. During the time when we were hunter-gatherers, most of our history, we lived in small bands, 70 or 100 people. And that's what we knew how to do. We knew how to live with 70 or 100 people.
Together.
We didn't know how to live with 340 million people
Right.
We have to learn how to do that. And personally, my view is, what is our problem? We're still living with the post-traumatic stress of the invention of agriculture. We
Yep.
haven't figured out the hunter-gatherers, the remaining remnants of hunter-gatherer society, not everyone, but a remarkably majority percentage, they knew how to share. They knew how to take care of the
How to
old, the
love,
young,
how to care.
and they
Yep.
and the young and the old were integrated into their lives. We
Yep.
haven't
They
figured
had
out
different
those
resources.
things.
Yep. Yeah. It's very true. Very
And
true.
so that's our problem, is that
Yeah.
we haven't, it's not, think of it, whether under communism, socialism, capitalism, or any form of human social organization, tell me the society that thinks in terms of 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now. Not one of them has come up with a plan for our species that makes sense 100 years from now.
You know,
And
All right, good. Just follow me for a second, guys. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Carlos. Take it away.
I've been dying to. No, I want you to rant a little bit more after this, Han. But no, I've been dying to bring up the Dragon of Eden this entire conversation. And just follow me for a second here. So your late husband had this whole idea that we went from hunter-gatherer because of the cannabis plant. We started doing agriculture, right? Maybe the post-traumatic stress of agriculture, society, the fact that we had legal marijuana softened the blow. And maybe if we legalize, maybe we'll start getting smarter and start, be able to, cope with the stress of this agriculture.
And let's not forget the stoned ape theory, right?
Listen, no argument from me. I am, despite my ranting and preaching, I'm as bewildered as everyone else. But yeah, no, I think that remains a very robust theory. So long after Carl published it, it was, this question of the invention of agriculture, but it really changed us.
Yeah.
And what happened was we went from knowing how to distribute stuff to being in a dominance hierarchy, like some of our ancestors and some of the, the non-human primates. And that's been so unfortunate. And we have to reestablish a balance so that the distribution of what we have on this planet is not so horrendously, obscenely unequal. It's wrong.
Yeah, you touch on it perfectly there. That we live in a society of abundance, and anybody who gets the opportunity to travel from America to other parts of the world, and you go outside of the tourist trap areas, you really see, the blessings that we have been bestowed upon on this great land that we have. The fact that we live on as a country, it's so huge too. Most countries you can drive through in a few hours. America takes a few days to drive through, and there's so many vast green spaces and resources, and the fact that as a society we still don't guarantee health care for every human being that's in this country. And right now our government is shut down because there is one side that is saying, basically we want to make sure that we take away waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. And the way to do that is to basically just end healthcare subsidies altogether. And then there's another side that's saying, well, no, people should have healthcare, and we don't want to see people's income impacted by taking away these subsidies, and people got to spend another $2,000 a month, and they can't feed their kids or pay their rent because they need to carry health insurance. And then you look at other countries and they're like, you guys are fighting over health insurance. It's just so ironic that we can put people on the moon, we can explore the deepest parts of the ocean, but for some reason feeding the poor and caring for the sick in a country that espouses to follow a prophet that had those values, and then we don't live up to it as a society. It hits on the head of the writings that you and Carl have really advocated for, is that, it's like, wow, the demons are here and they're running the show.
They are running the show. Yeah. They're running the show. They're kidnapping people every day.
And they're doing it without empathy. I think that's one thing we have lost so greatly, is empathy, because of that, as a cosmic community, we have to have empathy that kind of ties us together for us to understand each other's feelings. I mean, the late great Charlie Kirk said there's no such thing as empathy. There's only sympathy, because you can't feel somebody else's feelings. I totally disagree with that. I mean, I don't know whether you have to have a more active pineal gland, or just be able to have more rotations with good weed so that you can actually connect with the people around you. But I think we've lost that empathetic connection that forces us to do the right thing, because they feel the other person's pain if you do something wrong.
Well, Gary, on that note, I just want to say I am so proud of Charlie Kirk. He hasn't said anything racist in over a month.
Oh, God.
Oh, you're going to have ICE agents at your house tomorrow. You know that.
I mean, again, Katrina always has called me a rebel, but it is really a revolutionary act to think in a time of ignorance.
It is.
And that's where we are right now. We live in times of ignorance, and we uphold ignorant demagogues as heroes, when your heroes should be people like Ann, like Carl, like I said, Fred Rogers and Bob Ross and Steve Irwin. Those are heroes. Those are people who dedicated their lives to a cause and have made humanity better for it. Not people who get on a podcast and talk shit. I mean, I don't look at myself as a hero. The people who get online and just talk smack, it doesn't make any sense. If you want to be a hero, go out there today and improve the lives. Go help some people in Jamaica right now. Go help some people in Haiti. Go help some people on the street corner there in Ybor.
Right.
People who are heroes are people like Carlos, who make sure that when someone comes in off the street, he can give them a cigarette and a bottle of water, just to make their day a little bit easier. Carlos gives out.
I don't smoke anymore, but thank you.
No,
but you sell cigarettes, and the fact that you're willing to take money out your own pocket just so someone can have a little joy, and who's hit rock bottom. I mean, that's a hero. That's what matters. People like Gary who will corner politicians in the hallway just so they take 5 seconds to hear a bill that can improve the lives of people struggling every day with chronic debilitating conditions. And so I think that if you want to be a hero today, take the examples of great people who we have on this show and who we continue to bring on as guests, and do something about it. Get off your ass and make the world a better place, because that's exactly the legacy that people like Ann and Carl have left for us to continue on, is that, nothing's going to get done if we keep our heads down into our phones. We got to get up and pay attention to the world around us. And so if you want to make a difference in the world, speak out and do that. Don't just allow the ignorance to thrive, because until we stand up and say, no, this is wrong, then it's going to continue. And then we can't allow it to. People get on this kick, about, bullying. And it's like, we got to a point where we let the bullies take control. We used to be a nation that would say that's not acceptable. In the 1940s, we punched bullies square in the mouth.
Right up in there.
And in here today, we got bullies wearing masks and snatching old ladies off the street.
That's right.
And hog tying little kids, and it's like, no, speak out. So yeah, if they show up to my house, they're more than welcome to find an American who knows his rights and who has no problem exercising them, and they can take that for whatever it means.
I think one of the big
something you
go ahead
before, Keno, that honestly scared the shit out of me is sooner or later they're going to run out of immigrants. It's like they're going to start throwing potheads in those cells.
Oh, they already are. Already are.
Carlos,
yeah,
that brings me to my next question. I did want to miss.
Don't put that on us.
And I didn't want to miss asking you this, and I don't know if you covered it when I dropped off a little bit there. But Carl wrote the essay under the pseudonym of X.
Yes.
And I don't know if you covered this or not. Because he was open to anybody who asked him, And we see, and I am absolutely certain that cannabis use helps him expand his mind along with the discipline, because you have to have expansive mind expansion and discipline in order to understand the things that you're facing when you disassociate with your body for at least even a little bit to think. But why was the article written under a pseudonym of X?
Okay, Carl wrote that before he and I were together. So I cannot answer that question for you.
Wow.
I don't know. I think probably at the time he might have done that because he was a central participant in so many NASA missions. And he may have felt at the time
Oh,
that, it would mean that he couldn't ply his trade as an astronomer and a scientist. And I think that might have concerned him. But I don't think there was any, at the time when he wrote it, I don't know what the discussion was of would use his name, don't use his name. He was not famous then. And so it might not have made any difference if they had used his name in a positive way, because people didn't really know who he was.
oh.
I see. I was wondering about that. I mean, we've known that cannabis has been used for millennia as mind
Absolutely.
expanding and as a muse. I mean, when it was used in Rome
Muse,
and in
exactly.
Greece, in
Yeah.
medicine and in philosophy, and of course the Breakfast Club in France in the 1800s with Alexandre Dumas and that group there, who used to regularly get together and smoke, and they go back and write.
Right.
Possibly
No,
even the Bronte sisters, but I'm
Stimulate
not
your
sure.
mind, Craig. Stimulate your mind.
well,
And yes, of course, and Craig and Smokey of Compton. who-
I do want to take it. You were just on this, Gary, about Mr. X, which is a pseudonym that Carl Sagan took while he was working with Lester Grinspoon on this book. But I just want to read this quote directly from Mr. X. The illegality of cannabis is outrageous, an impediment to full utilization of a drug which helps produce the serenity and insight, sensitivity, and fellowship so desperately needed in this increasingly mad and dangerous world.
That's
Way.
it.
That was way before you met him. That was right.
That was before I met him. I'm telling you, he was cool. He was always cool. He was born that
This
way.
guy been in the books.
This is a guy who could contemplate existence in multiple dimensions, so
Tupac version of the guy.
I would tell you this much: when you sober, it's hard enough, but hey, to expand your mind, right? And that's the whole thing about the absurdity of prohibition, is that we know that it's always been politically motivated. It's never been about protecting people, and even as the science proves otherwise, you still run into these barriers of prohibitionists saying outrageous propaganda in committee hearings. We go up there and we're like, hey, we want you to make sure that veterans have safe access so they can deal with the physical, emotional, and spiritual pain that they go through after fighting 20 years of a global war on terror, right? And then you have people like the Florida CFO who thinks that there's some type of joke, or that we're advocating for something that's horrifically wrong with this society. Or just this weekend, it was Halloween, and every single year for the past decade of this chapter, we've had to have counter press conferences. Like, nobody wants to give your kids edibles on Halloween. And if there is a house giving out edibles on Halloween, give me the address, please.
That's it. Put it in the bag. Just be like, hey, check the bottom of the bag. That's for you, parent. Okay, baby candy. Thank you. Parent candy.
What? Another thing that I've noticed, because I'm old and I've experienced this, is that ever since I was a teenager, the government has been saying, oh, this marijuana is not the marijuana of the 1930s.
yeah.
This is way more potent. And I have to tell you that has not been my experience at all.
At all.
At all. In fact,
Bring back the original Bush.
in the 1970s and 80s and 60s, we smoked tie sticks.
Yeah.
which
Okay.
were, like you go into a dispensary today and you talk to the person behind the counter about Thai sticks. They've never heard of them.
Sticky
And
yellow
that was
things on a piece of bamboo.
It was
a
Yep.
tight.
little sliver of bamboo with a beautiful golden filament.
Yep.
Those Thai sticks, that was time dilation on a whole other level. They were magnificent,
You saw the real unicorn.
creative, stimulating, thrilling, wonder-filled. And so whenever I see this thing, I saw it, in the last couple of weeks, no, it's much, much stronger. No, they're always trying to rule by fear. That's how they try to control everyone, by fear. And I think that, a rule of thumb can be that if someone's trying to rule you by fear, they're probably, what they're selling probably isn't real.
At all.
Whereas, it's like if they're appealing to the most basic and least thoughtful part of you, it means that they realize that what they're selling is bogus. So,
Oh man, I need a couple people to hear this today. I really need to shoot this out to a couple people.
it's true, but
plug them in the
politics,
wall. Plug them in the wall with this.
Katrina, it's politics, it's religion,
Right.
it's selling you stuff. It's always the same thing. And
Yeah.
if someone's, pointing that finger at you and telling you, you better watch out, this is going to really be bad. When you mentioned Bob Ross and Carl and Mr. Rogers, whom I adore, and all these people, what were they doing? They were opening things up for people. They were encouraging, inspiring people to be artistic, to be scientific, to be empathetic, to reach out to other humans. That's what they were saying, and that's because they had complete and total faith in the goodness that you would find if you could open yourself up. And so it's the opposite of fear-based.
Well, I appreciate that you brought to us a product that was informative, entertaining, and moreover real. Because
Thank you.
we still deal
Thank
with disgraced retracted papers on autism that are
Yes.
being listed as standard practice now as reality. And we have a Surgeon General here in Florida who wants to get rid of vaccines, number one, because of the fact he happens to sell ivermectin online, among other things.
It's despicable. It is despicable. And I guess, if I can leave you with one thought, it is the great beauty of life is worth protecting, defending, is worth stepping up and speaking out for, not to hurt another person, not to do anything bad to anyone, but to stand up for the great beauty of life. And from my personal experience, cannabis has been one of the ways in which has facilitated that impulse in me. And I'm really grateful to all of you for the work you continue to do. It's really vital. And it's been such a great pleasure to be with you guys today. Really delightful.
Thank you, Ann. We really do appreciate it. You are welcome back on this show anytime.
Thank you.
I hope that the universe allows us to cross paths and have a real rotation, because I know it would be illuminating for myself and for the rest of us. And Carlos, with all of that, man.
Wait, hold on.
Go ahead, brother.
The spirit of what you just said, I have one last question, then we'll jump into
Go
the
ahead.
news. What was it like to smoke a joint with Carl Sagan?
It was
I would buy tickets to that.
Yeah.
it was paradise, is the only way I can describe it. We were in paradise. I feel like my life since then is beautiful. I'm still alive to the great beauty of life, but I look back on the 20 years we spent together as, the greatest honor, blessing, joy of my life. And, I just, even 17, 18 years into it, we were still, both of us, just so excited at the idea that we could stay up as late as we wanted to together. And, you know,
Smoke a
7
slip.
days, 7 days a week.
Oh,
You
I
know,
had to ask you a question. What is a wedding ring orbit with the two asteroids?
okay. So we've been honored by a wonderful astronomer named Eleanor Glow Helene. And what she did was, Carl, you know, the International Astronomical Union is responsible for naming extraterrestrial bodies, features on other worlds, moons, planets. And so Eleanor was generous enough to, Carl already had an asteroid named after him. And Eleanor, on Carl's 60th birthday, gave me an asteroid, Druyan, an asteroid, and they are in wedding ring orbit around the sun. So it means that they are like this kind of orbit. I don't know if it really doesn't. They are in perpetual
Interlocking
gravitationally
orbits.
locked in these orbits as they travel around the sun
Wow.
in a much larger orbit. And
Like
so,
love bugs.
isn't that beautiful? Can you imagine how lucky I have been? I mean, my brain, like when I think about it, I just can't
Blessed.
believe
Very blessed.
that I was so fortunate.
I
Yeah.
can tell you that my wife, who lost her eyesight about almost 18 years ago now, she is an absolute major fan of Carl Sagan, even when she was a little girl. And we thought about the article and things of that sort. And she has mentioned the fact that even though she lost her eyesight, she has this thing called Charles Bonnet syndrome, which makes her see things that aren't there because the brain does not have any light coming in. And when she uses cannabis, she sees so much more than other people do, and that's what she says. And she said, like Carl Sagan.
Beautiful. That's so
Wow.
beautiful. Please give her a hug for me.
Absolutely.
And again, we thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to just commiserate with us on the show, to share your experiences, your accomplishments, to share your a little insight into your life with Carl, and just continuing to just educate the masses of the value of truth, of honesty, of compassion and empathy, and of discovery. And so we appreciate the legacy that you've created, and I pray that future generations take it and run with it and reach for the stars. And with all of that, Carlos, I think it's time for the normal news, brother. So at the top of the news hour, we got news coming out of Virginia. Local government officials cannot take disciplinary action against a Hanover County firefighter who uses state-authorized medical cannabis products while off duty, according to a preliminary injunction issued earlier this month by a judge for the 15th Judicial Circuit in Virginia. The injunction finds that it is in the public interest to protect the right of Virginians to use lawfully authorized medical cannabis products without fear of retaliation or termination by their employers. It further finds that local officials are not at risk of losing federal funding by allowing public employees to consume medical cannabis while they are away from their jobs. The injunction specifically restricts the county's enforcement actions, stating that firefighters' lawful off-duty use, limited to cannabis oil as defined by statute, does not impair his performance or safety and must be accommodated consistent with Virginia law. Why is this so important? Because right now in the state of Florida, despite the fact that we've had a medical cannabis program since 2017, people are still fired from their jobs every day because we live in a world where we have not updated drug testing policy laws to the current science. In a world of total prohibition, it makes complete sense that nothing should be in your system that is illegal. But we don't live in that world anymore. We live in a world where medical cannabis is a state-sanctioned medicine, and people should not encounter sanctions or legal consequences for utilizing a drug that is legal, that is authorized for people with chronic debilitating conditions. For that reason, your chapter of Normal here at Suncoast has authored a bill for the past several years on employment protections for patients. And there is actually an action alert going around right now. Carlos is going to drop the links in the chat, so click that link. But we have a public employment protection for patients bill, Senate Bill 136, sponsored by Senator Polsky, that prohibits public employers from taking adverse personnel action against an employee or job applicant for their use of medical marijuana if the employee or job applicant is a qualified patient. It also requires employers to provide advance notice of cannabis testing to allow patients to provide proof of registration in the medical cannabis program, and provides recourse for damages that occur because of inappropriate adverse actions taken by employers. Listen, we need to pass this bill. And right now we're in need of a House sponsor. So we need you to click on that link, send this automated email from Normal to your lawmakers. Governor DeSantis needs to sign this bill. Our senators need to give it a hearing. We need members of the House. I don't care what party they're in, Democrat, Republican. We need a House sponsor to take up this bill, and we need to get it over the finish line. The fact that we've been bringing this bill back every single session since 2020, and it hasn't even got a hearing, is unacceptable by the lawmakers of Florida, and we need each and every one of you to do your part by clicking that link and sending a letter today. Now, on that note, we also have another bill moving through the state of Florida, and it is to protect the parental rights of medical cannabis patients. Senate Bill 130 will prohibit courts from denying or restricting certain parental rights based solely on a parent's status as a qualified medical cannabis patient. It also prohibits state officials from accusing parents of child endangerment based solely on a parent's status as a qualified patient. Look, there are tons of canna moms out there. There are plenty of moms who wind down at the end of the day with a glass of wine, and there are moms who choose to smoke a joint. It doesn't make you a bad parent. And the fact is that if you have a chronic debilitating medical condition, it should not be used against you in court, either in a custody hearing. It shouldn't be used against you just by the fact that you're a patient and you have kids. And this is another bill. Again, click the link, hit the action alert, send a letter to your lawmakers. Again, Senator Polsky, thank you for being a champion on this bill. But we also need House sponsors. We need the Republicans who are currently in power in Florida to give it a committee hearing, and we need to get it over the finish line. This is actually the second year in a row that we're bringing this bill back, and it is based strongly on what they've done in the state of New York. And so we're thankful to Keith Stropp, who founded Normal and continues to serve in his 80s as our chief legal counsel, for helping advise us in writing this bill and making sure that we're doing right. Now, there's a lot going on in this country, okay? And, you need to realize that there are powers that be that don't want to see this happen. There are other powers that be that want to continue to make money off of this. But there is money that is being made off of human suffering when it comes to cannabis prohibition, and it has for over the past 80 years. And so we need you to tell Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, I know that's the craziest thing, the words come out of my mouth, but tell him, the White House and Congress, to support descheduling and conviction relief. Normal wants the White House and Congress to know that it's time to bring this failed experiment with marijuana prohibition to a swift and conclusive end and undo the damage it has caused. So click the action alert, send this letter to the president and to your members of Congress, and tell them to get off their asses and do something about this. And more than that, reopen the government and protect people's health care. It doesn't make any sense that we're in this spot right now where there are people who are protecting us right now as a country and they're not getting paid. It doesn't make any sense that there are people who are food insecure, who can't feed their kids. And right now they're wondering, wow, food stamps are not going to hit this month. And even if they do get the funds out today, it will be a couple weeks before people see them in their accounts. And that is just not acceptable. We need to do better as a country. We need to do better as a society, and we need to legalize it. So with that, I want to read some interesting studies, because as you know, a lot of this is personal. It's personal for me because my own dad was diagnosed with dementia. He was giving no options of any type of relief. They told him he had 6 months to live. And because my mom took such great care of him, and that I had friends and family that helped out and took care, he was able to live 7 years with this debilitating condition. But the fact is that there is now a clinical trial that shows the daily use of plant-derived cannabis extracts improve cognition reduction in dementia patients. And patients suffering from dementia associated with Alzheimer's disease exhibit those cognitive improvements following the sustained use of those plant-derived cannabinoid extracts, according to a placebo-controlled clinical trial data that has been published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease. An international team of investigators from Brazil and the United States compared the efficacy of low-dose cannabis extracts versus placebo in 28 patients with Alzheimer's-associated dementia. And the study participants consumed either a THC to CBD balance extract or a placebo for 26 weeks. And the patient's cognitive performance was assessed at a baseline at 4, 8, 12, and 26 weeks. Now, the patients who received the placebo experienced an overall decrease in their cognitive performance, while those who got the cannabis showed cognitive improvements. And this should not be a shock because the Department of Health and Human Services has had a patent on utilizing cannabis to treat oxidative diseases since 2003. So the government has known about this research, and every time I hear a politician say, we need to do more research, it really grinds my gears. So we need to continue to push the science. We need to continue to show that this is valuable, that it helps people, and that it is the right thing to legalize and utilize. Now, for those out there who also suffer from diabetes and some of the things that come with that, there's a longitudinal study that inhaled cannabis is safe and effective for treating refractory diabetic neuropathy. And this is based off of data published in Biomedicines. Israeli researchers assessed the adjunctive use of inhaled cannabis in a cohort of 50 patients suffering from treatment-resistant diabetic neuropathy. The study participants inhaled standardized medical-grade cannabis flower, which was 20% THC to 1% CBD for 5 years, and the patients reported significant decreases in their pain scores, as well as reductions in their use of opioids and other prescription analgesics over the span of the study. Specifically, participants decreased their morphine equivalent doses by more than 90%, their gabapentin doses by 97%, their duloxetine by 93%, and their pregabalin by 79% without developing rebound pain. Patients' pain severity decreased from a mean of 9 to 2 on a numerical rating scale. And the study participants also exhibited improvements in their A1C glucose levels following their sustained use of cannabis. And this finding is consistent with other studies assessing the impact of cannabinoids on glycemic control. Again, cannabis does not make you a fat, lazy stoner. Cannabis is a treatment for so many chronic debilitating conditions, and is proof by our guest today and by the amazing people who have utilized cannabis over the years. We can continue to make sure that there is safe access to this plant, and we should. And that only is going to happen is if you, the people watching this show, contribute and you do your part. And so we're asking you today to make a donation to Suncoast NORML so we can improve things here in the state of Florida. And I want to make a call for everybody out there to go to normal.org, click that donate button. If you donate at least $42 this year, you can get a NORML membership card. There's some amazing swag in the NORML store as well. You can get your Christmas ornaments, get the hoodies for your loved ones. But overall, organizations like this have been on the ground for over 50 years fighting for the rights of responsible cannabis users, and the mission is not accomplished yet. We've only legalized it in half this country, and half is not good enough. Also, we've exported prohibition to numerous other countries, impacting their own long historical cultural relationship with cannabis, and that makes no sense. So we need to end prohibition worldwide, but it starts with you. Take the time, make that donation today, become a member of NORML, join our chapter here in Florida. We have amazing events. We just had a puff and paint last month that had so many great people out there, and we were able to raise money for a good cause. But we need to make sure that we put gas in the tank to get Kiuri up there to Tallahassee. We need to make sure that we get house sponsors. Do your part today to send a letter to your lawmakers, and let's get this over the finish line. Let's get it done, and let's legalize it. Back to you in the studio, Carlos.
I did want to make one quick mention. And now I just forgot what I was going to say. So that's what happens when I have to wait for so long to wait till you to finish off the news.
Man, how cool is that, though? We just interviewed Carl Sagan's wife.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
That was crazy.
I mean, the fact that we got to interview Druyan, who worked on the Voyager program, that is heavy. And I wanted to say, like, Carl Sagan is a name that people know, but Anne herself is a legend in her own right. I mean, Carl passed away in the 90s, but and created the cosmos that everybody knows and love, and really helped elevate Neil deGrasse Tyson too, to put him in every home, So there's so much work that she's contributed to as a scientist and as a producer, and I'm honored that we had her on the show. I would say, other than Tommy Chong, she's probably the most famous person we've had on the show.
She was like directing Jodie Foster once. Like,
yeah,
Jodie, just stand over
amazing.
there and pretend like you're looking at the stars. Like, she said that once. That was crazy.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Anyways, I did want to mention that our bill in regards to public health or public employees and their health cards and things of that sort, that has now been co-sponsored by Carlos Guillermo Smith. And we need more senators to co-sponsor this bill to get it into committee, especially anybody who's on the healthcare committee. So if you want to go ahead and check out and see which senators those are, you should contact them and get them to co-sponsor.
Man, we need Republicans, all right? For all you
Yes.
MAGA supporters out there who smoke weed, I need you to tell your lawmakers to get off their ass and do something about it, okay? This isn't about immigrants. This isn't about minorities. This isn't about a religion or any other crazy wedge issues that people have. This is about human compassion. There are sick people who need help, and they don't need to lose their jobs. They don't need to lose their kids. They don't need to experience discrimination just because they smoke weed. And we need the lawmakers to pay attention to it and get it over the finish line, because Gary works really fucking hard on our bills, and me and Carlos and Kat and everybody else at the Normal board at Suncoast and at National Normal are trying to push this over the finish line, and we need your help to do it, because I can literally count the handful of activists and humans across this country who are waking up every day and trying to push this over the finish line. And we need a massive movement and a reinvigoration of people to come back to the cannabis advocacy movement, because the industry is not where it is. The industry doesn't give two shits about consumers. They just want to make their dollar, because if they did, they'd be donating to Normal en masse. They'd be pushing this a narrative. They would be using their clout to get this over the finish line, not some bastard reclassification of cannabis, not to where they get to corner the market. And Carlos and I said this in the opening speech that kicked off our Normal chapter over 11 years ago. It was that you don't deserve to make 1 red cent in this industry if you don't put people first, because those are your customers. Those are the patients who are suffering. And that's where we're at right now. And so we're going to need a groundswell of support. If you're an old head who smoked weed in the 70s, then come on back into the movement. If you're a young Zoomer or a millennial and now you're a parent, come back into the movement. We need you all. We need everybody pitching in. We have a new direction in this cannabis movement with Normal, with the Marijuana Policy Project, with the Last Prisoner Project, with High Times, and we're rebranding for the 21st century and to take us to the next level to accomplish the mission, but we can't do it without your help.
Now, Chris, are you saying that this next amendment for recreational cannabis here in Florida is more driven by profits than it is by the consumer?
It's become a dick measuring contest between Ron DeSantis and Trulieve. Let's call it what it is.
Because we do have that situation where right now Trulieve is actually suing the administrative branch of the state because of the fact that they want to eliminate 200,000 petitions and therefore make them not eligible to move the petition forward yet. And so they're actually having to go back and sue them. And it is going back and forth. But the question is, who is the person who's supposed to benefit from this the most? If you say it's the consumer, I will agree with you. If you say it's the corporations, I say you're halfway there. And you lack empathy.
I mean, look, here's the point. We supported it last election in 2024 because Florida still has some of the most draconian drug laws on the books. If you're not a medical patient, and even if you are a medical patient, they've even passed laws now where Ron DeSantis is stripping away your medical card if you get caught carrying it improperly, if you don't have it in the original container, if you wind up smoking bud yourself, maybe you don't want to buy that dispensary booth, right? And they will take your right away as a cannabis consumer to legally consume in this state. More than that, we have a lot of issues with the fact that 20 grams or more still get you a felony in the state of Florida, takes away your voting rights, can take away your kids, can cost you your job, cost you tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. So yes, we supported the adult use of cannabis. And again, Florida is a single issue state on the ballot. We want to see home grow as part of the program. All right. That is going to take a separate initiative. That is going to take more work. That is going to take us passing bills in Tallahassee. And so we're going to need everyone's support to do that. When people say, I'm not voting for this because it doesn't include home grow, it can include home grow. It cannot by law. They have struck it down time and time again when we've tried to do that. Normal of Florida and Mike Minardi would regulate Florida had a bill that had an amendment, and they struck it down. It included home grow. So again, if you want home grow, let's get it over the finish line. Let's make it happen. Let's create a system where we can have home grow. All right.
We do have a bill that creates home grow thing in a way that even the conservative wing of the legislature here in Florida will agree with. And we have a bill to include autism and opioid dependence as qualifying conditions, so they don't have to go ahead and go through mental gymnastics to make certain that you get the medication, and to make certain that if you are in a rehab center, it will no longer be illegal to use cannabis as part of your treatment like it is right now. So we have to fix these things and move forward. And one more thing I should say, because we do have a president right now who is currently showing the aggressive phase of dementia, which a lot of people who are involved in dementia understand. There is a solution for him. I don't think he's going to take it, but
I mean, look, I don't know what the current health condition is of our very healthy president. Okay. But I do know that being in your 80s and being close to 300 pounds is never a good thing. I'm going towards my mid 40s, and I know that I'm over 300 pounds, and it doesn't feel good. So I can't imagine how his old ass feels carrying all that weight on those old bones. But I do know that cannabis does help with chronic pain, and it does help with diabetes, and it does help with all the other underlying conditions that come from being fat and old. And if you're fat and old out there and you're not consuming cannabis and you're taking a fistful of pills every day, maybe it's time to rethink your health plan with your doctor. And if you live in a medical state and you're so lucky to do that, then you're blessed. And some people are not, because there are 25 states in this country where adult use is not accessible. There's still, several states in this country where there's total prohibition, and it's sad. And we need to continue to push. And we have a corrupt Justice Department right now. Call it what it is. They are more focused on being cruel and corrupt. I said this earlier on social media. All of my heroes have CIA files. All of your heroes have Epstein files. Be careful how you talk to me.
I like that one. I'm gonna probably use it and call it my own.
Well, team, look, next week we're going to be back in the rotation. We have amazing guests. Gary has slated some awesome guests over the coming months that are going to be involved heavily in Florida politics. If you want to make a change, we're going to give the opportunity to showcase some of these candidates out there, and you get the opportunity to elect new leaders that are forward-thinking, that are cannabis consumer-minded, and that are willing to change the policy for the betterment of you and your family. And I think that is something that we need to do. The time has come to stop electing fear-mongering politicians that just don't get it. It is time for us to elect people that have science-based approaches to public policy and that are going to do better for the vast majority of us. So I look forward to showcasing those candidates. Gary, thank you for all the hard work that you do. We know that the thank yous and the accolades are sometimes not enough, but again, that's why it's so important for us to continue to donate, to become members of the organization, to join Suncoast Normal, to join Normal, and making sure that we can get us over the finish line when it comes to our public policy advocacy.
And if you're in Tallahassee next week, you'll see me there. Just so you know, I do look shorter in public than I do on the screen right now. I don't know what that is.
All right. Well, team, we will catch y'all in the rotation next week. Peace.
was just one.